Gladys Walcott, we're so glad that we're able to do this interview with you on this cold Tuesday, February 19th, 2013. Um, I'd like for you to begin by telling me about yourself and the history of your family.
Okay. Okay. My mom and dad, Rowan and Maisie, were parents of three. I have two sisters. San Benita, is that what you want? San Benita, the youngest, and Janetta, who passed away last May, my middle sister. I think we came to Cleveland. My mother's family, they all sort of follow each other. My aunt, her brother, her sister and brother came to Cleveland, and they sent letters telling her about Cleveland, etc. This was back in 1940, maybe 44, 43. I can't remember when the war was over because I know the war ended a couple of years afterward, but anyway. And we came on the train. Soldiers was on the train, the four of us. My dad had already come. He got a job at Oco Waste Paper Company, which was a company that made paper, which was very vital to the war, whatever they were doing during those years. And I remember when on the train, the three of us, the soldiers were, of course, the coaches were separated then, black and white. But the soldiers that was in our coach, they got up and gave us seats. They fed us chocolates all the way to Cleveland. And when we got to coming into the terminal tower, I looked out, and I don't remember what month it was, but I knew it wasn't a winter month. But I looked out and I saw all these lights, and I said, "Mama, it's Christmas here." And so I remember her saying, "No, it's not Christmas." I said, "Look at the Christmas lights." All these lights was, you could see the city as you come into the city. So it was rather exciting. But anyway, in coming to Cleveland, we stayed on East 39th Street. And that must have been in the 1940s, middle 40s. And one day, several months after we had come, maybe a year, I don't know, my sister Jeanette and I was out in the backyard playing. And so Mama says, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "We see some squirrels." And she said, "Squirrels?" She said, "Yes." So we was out throwing rocks at these, what we thought was squirrels. But during those years, they had torn down the apartments on East 40th Streets, and all these rats had migrated over. So we thought they were squirrels. In the meantime, my youngest sister, San Benita, Mama had refused to put her in school because she wasn't ready for her to go to school because she wasn't sure about Cleveland. And so when Mama found out these rats were there, she went right in, she packed her clothes, packed up, and we went back to Arkansas. And my dad, he was so upset. I could remember him being so upset with my mother. And she says, "No, I'm not staying here. I'm not keeping my girls here with all these rats. No, no, no." But anyway, it's a funny story. So we stayed in Arkansas with my grandparents for about a year before he found another decent place for us to live. Because during those years, they would not rent to families with children that much, and not in the decent neighborhoods. And my dad was scheduled, I believe, to go to the military. And the reason I can remember that, because I think people he worked for sent some letter that he was the only one that, even though he had this just 5th grade education, he was the only one that could operate some of these machines at that company. So that kept him out of the military, but during that time, I think the war ended and everything was okay. So Anyway, after that, I guess that's when we started to migrate to Mount Pleasant area for the better schools and better neighborhoods and that kind of thing. In the meantime, we were still going to the Mount Olive, to the Church of God in Christ, which was on 38th and Scoville. And I think I mentioned that already, that we moved to the location that we're at now. So, what else do you want to know about my family?
What was your parents' full names, and where were they born?
Mama Maisie Russell, born in Girton, Arkansas. My dad, Roland Russell, was born in Thornton, Arkansas. And as I stated before, we lived in several different little communities because the mill moved around during those years. So we lived in several small communities, I would call them, in the state of Arkansas. My grandparents, Mama's mom and dad, Fanny and Wesley Phillips, lived in Girton, Arkansas, in a farm area. I can remember every Christmas, my grandfather would bring canned food, canned fruit and vegetables, meats, because they had cattle, pigs, and you name it on the farm. And he would bring in a wagon to all of his children during Christmas or Thanksgiving, whenever, all these goodies to our house and to my aunt's house and whatnot. My mother, I think my mother had 11 brothers and sisters. I can remember her telling me about my grandfather didn't have the girls work in the field that much because he had sons. So that's something that sort of came up in our family, that the women in the family do a certain thing and the men in the family do a certain thing. When my youngest sister was born, now we lived in Murfreesboro, which is the diamond mine city, only natural diamond mine city in the United States. We lived in a city called Thornton, Arkansas, and Malvern, Arkansas. I can remember those three communities. My sister, San Benita, was born in, I have three sisters, San Benita and Janetta. I'm the oldest of the three. We're like 2 years apart, all of us. When San Benita was born in Malvern, Arkansas, my sister and I, Janetta, was sleeping in the next room because we had these small houses. I remember we had this huge front porch and a back porch that my mother would allow my sister and I to play on. We couldn't go off the porch. So when San was born, we were sleeping in the next room, and I got up the next morning and I saw this baby with my mother. And I asked Mama, I said, Mama, who's baby? She said, Aunt Julie. Then there was the little country doctor there. And she says, Aunt Julie, the doctor gave the baby to Aunt Julie. Aunt Julie didn't want the baby, so I decided to take the baby and raise the baby with you and Ned. I said, oh, okay. I remembered that, so from that community, we moved to another community. So when I got there, I started telling people, San's not really my sister. She was given to my mother because my aunt didn't want her. So she was given to Mama because she wanted, she needed somebody to play with. So when the story got back to my mother, I can remember this because that's the only whipping I remember getting so bad. When the story got back to my mother, that's the only time I can remember her really giving me this licking, with the whip. And I couldn't understand it. And finally, that evening when my dad came home from work, we was at the table, and she told us, anything that goes on in this house, stay in this house. You're not to spread it out in the community. San is your sister, and I shouldn't have told you that. I said, but you said it, Ma, And she said, yeah, I said it, so it stay in the house, So from that point on, I knew that whatever was done in our house, I could not talk about it. So that was really a good lesson. And I didn't get many whippings with strap or whatever they did in those days, because I would cry if my mother yelled at me or my dad act like he was going to yell at me. I would break into these big tears, you know. So they didn't. So I never got any whippings or anything. But anyway, after that one, anyway, we attended in Murfreesboro. We attended a school in the school house, we called it, because it was one big room. It was close to where we lived, and the white kids went to another school. So I thought it was because we lived in that area and we was closest to the school. Because after school was over, then we'd all play together in the creek. We had a creek. We'd go down there and wade, and some would swim. We'd catch crayfish and bring them back up to our playhouse. It was fun growing up anyway. I guess after we'd go to my grandfather's and my grandmother's, the Phillips side, my mother's, every Christmas, usually after the holidays, because we'd celebrate at home, then we'd go to my grandparents'. And my grandfather had this wagon that I mentioned a moment ago. And I know one time we went, and there was a flood, like, in an area. And I could see my grandfather coming across with these big stakes, you know. And he was checking the depth of the water. I guess I was, I don't know, I might have been 9 years old. And he was directing the car where to come, and I could remember seeing snakes that he had shot, you know, rattlesnakes, because it was like we called it down in the bottom, you know, and there were a lot of snakes in the area. So anyway, it was, I don't know why I'm remembering all that now, but it's coming back to me. So eventually, when we came to Cleveland, we lived in an apartment near the projects where the houses had been torn down, and so there was these rodents that had moved from where they tore the buildings down over to near the apartments. So my mother refused to put my youngest sister in school. I was in school. I was going to Case Woodland School. It's no longer there. It was right on 40th and Woodland. And so after she discovered we thought the rats were squirrels, she told my dad she's not going to stay here, and we went back to Arkansas. We stayed in Arkansas for about a year, and he found a better place for us, so we came back to Cleveland. And we lived in the Mount Pleasant area, where I attended middle school. My youngest sister was going to the elementary school there. And then I went on through the high school, through John Adams High School.
What kind of activities did you do while you were in school?
Well, I played basketball. I played volleyball. I ran track. And my first year in high school, we'd go to the football games, and I got a date. Big deal. I got a date to go to the prom. Well, I was just sitting in study hall, and I would watch the game out, and this guy would come over and he'd talk to me through the window, you know. And so he asked me to go to his prom. Was I 15? I was 16. Yeah, I was 16. And so my mom and dad said, yeah, you can go, but you have to be back by 12. So I went to the prom, and of course all my girlfriends was teasing me that I was going with this older guy because he was graduating, and I was going to his prom, and I just got to high school. So of course, I don't know, after that it seemed like I went to a prom every year, but nevertheless, he went off to the military. His name is Edward Johnson. He went off to the Marines. When it was time for my prom, he was going to come home, but he didn't get there the day before the prom. So by that time, I had got another date because I didn't trust that, which was my children's father. You know. And to just get back into that is so strange. He called me. He calls me now every Valentine's Day, every Mother's Day. He used to write. He wrote the music for the Cosby Show, you know. And so one time he called, he asked me if I would go to Africa with him because he was going back to Africa. This was after my husband and I separated. And at first I thought, oh, that would be good, you know. I'd get Mama to take care of the kids. My sisters would take care of the kids. And then he called back and he said, you remember that time when you stood me up from the prom? He said, you know, I think about that a lot now sometime. I said, oh, okay. And so when he called back, I said, I'm not going to Africa with you because you might take me over there and leave me. But anyway, it was a funny story. But he's a nice guy. He's nice. He calls, you know, to see about the family and everything. He's divorced as well. But okay, coming back to Cleveland. Okay.
Before you came back to Cleveland, you were in school and you were saying that there was a separate, you know, the white students went to one school and the blacks went to another. Can you recall any other situations where, you know, any Jim Crow situations?
You know, I didn't even realize anything about prejudices until I came to Cleveland. And I guess we were just so naive because we would play together. And I knew that the white families, my dad raised chickens, by the way. The white families would come down to get eggs. And I think was sort of a bartering kind of thing. And my mom, we would get milk from them. So they'd trade off. So they would come for the eggs, and sometimes we'd go to their house for the milk. And they were very friendly with my dad because as I mentioned a story earlier about they had to hide my father. That's the only thing I can remember is what he told us. Now, when I came to Cleveland, I started to realize the prejudices because I wanted to go to Clark Restaurant. They had a Clark, I think that was the name, and it was downtown. And there was one right here in East Cleveland where the best steakhouse was. That was Clark Restaurant. And blacks were not allowed to go there in Cleveland, you know. And that's when I started to realize more so about the prejudices is as I got a little older, you know. Not in Arkansas.
Here, not in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
But you started to talk about a situation when you were in Arkansas that your dad encountered.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Now he would just tell us that I was a baby. I was younger.
Okay.
Yeah, I was.
The story goes.
But the story goes. One of his supervisors, a superintendent of the mill, had told him he had to say yes, sir, to him and call him Mr. And my dad refused to. He said, well, when you start calling me Mr., I will call you Mr. And I think what my dad said, he said something about what I'm white. And so my dad told him, well, I'm the same color you are. There's no difference in our colors because there in the sun, the white folks had this tan. They had such a tan from working outside, and my dad did too, because he was light complected. And so the owner of the mill told my father that they was looking for him. There were some guys looking for him. So they took him and hid him in their area because they wasn't going to come looking in the white area. My mom said, and they put him under a bridge or something or near their house.
And these were some of the white people
who
was looking for him.
Yeah.
And some of the white people who hid him.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
The
yeah.
ones that liked him.
The ones that
wanted
liked him.
him to be okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when he left that area. My mother said that's when we left there and went to Murfreesboro. Went to Murfreesboro, Arkansas, and from Murfreesboro, we came to Cleveland eventually, and we lived in we lived in the project area on 40th and Woodland, and my mother wasn't happy with the environment there. Although we had come from Arkansas, but we had a decent little house of our own.
Besides
So,
the living conditions, is there anything else that she didn't like, your mother didn't like about the area where you settled?
um, number one, she didn't. I think it was the apartment. She didn't like living in apartments, because we lived in an apartment right across on Woodland near 39th, between 39th and 40th and Woodland, and we lived upstairs in this apartment, and she didn't like living, coming out of her door. That's what she would tell us, and going, she could see right into the other door and people seeing right into her house, so she moved out of the area. Well, he found a place that would take children and move. At first, though, before he got the nice place, we lived in on what did we call it? 105 there. Called it Jewtown. They called 105 like Pasadena, the Glenville area. Yeah, they called it Jewtown. So until we got the house, we lived in a house where she had to share a kitchen, and that was a very bad experience for Mama. So my mother had some really set ideas about what she wanted and where she wanted us to be, and that kind of thing. She let me tell you about when she met my father. Her brothers played baseball, so my dad came to the baseball game, and Mama was getting ready to go to high school, to Little Rock High, the famous high school in Little Rock, Arkansas. But my grandfather couldn't raise 75 cents for her to get on the bus to go. He had absolutely no money. He said, Mama said the crops were bad that year, and he had no money. All they was doing was bartering and trading things in order for the families to eat in the area. And so she met my dad and started talking to him, of course, about going back to school. And I guess he courted for a little while, and he said, well, I'll send you back to school if you marry me. So, of course, Mama married him, thinking she was going to go back to school, and they moved away from where my grandparents lived in Girton. And I guess, well, it was a while before she got pregnant with me. And she said he never sent her to school. And she said for so long she held that against him that she didn't get to go to high school to graduate, because she was going to go. She was in the 11th grade, and she wanted to go to high school and graduate in looks, because she had already gone to Little Rock before to school, and she had stayed with a family there because they boarded, had rooms for high school kids and different families, and that's where she stayed. As a matter of fact, that's how my youngest sister got her name. She stayed with a family. Her daughter's name was San Benito, and so, but my mother's a bookworm. I wish I could read like her. She liked to read, and although she didn't get further than high school, she didn't even finish in high school, but she's a reader, and she had, I used to be, I'm not that much anymore, but nevertheless, she knew what she wanted to do very early in life. She's a quilter. She quilt, and maybe I'll show you one of her quilts before you leave. And my dad would cut the little squares out, the patterns for her, so she could do the quilting. And so we all have quilts that she made. And the grandchildren, whoever would buy their first house, she would make a quilt for them. If they didn't buy their house, she wouldn't give them a quilt. If they didn't, own a home. Because she said, her theory was, you'll be moving and you'll leave the quilt there in the apartment. So, anyway, let's see, what else now? What else do you want to know, Michele?
Well, you talked about the fact that they were playing baseball. Was it with the Negro Leagues, or was that just part of their high school, or just a group of them got together?
Group of the families, the youngsters would get together and play baseball, and they'd have this big baseball game. Of course, all the families would come out, and they'd bring baskets and food, like a picnic basket, my mother said, and they would play. Her brothers played baseball because she had, six brothers, and they played baseball. And the girls would always go, and of course, Mama was quite a pretty lady, I imagine, when she was younger. And so she'd tell us, she says, I already had a boyfriend. I don't know why I married your father. Just because he promised to send me to school.
Well, let's hope that there was a lot more to it.
There was, for them to stay together 75 years. Yeah.
So looking back, if you were to put a label on your childhood or various places where you lived, if you want to do it that way, how would you characterize it? Stable, unstable, happy, unhappy, or?
We was happy, I remember one of the deacons in church, they was over once, and he was talking about, he was from Mississippi, I guess, and he was talking about how they would be hungry in their family, and Mama said, we've never been hungry. And so he says, I can't believe that. She said, but we've never been hungry. I've never been hungry. None of my family have never been hungry, because whoever had, we'd share. And I think as my income was low, because for a while I was raising my children by myself, and I applied for help through the system, and they said I made too much money to get any help. And so every time I would get a raise, I would leave my raise. I wouldn't use it. I would put it in my credit union. I wouldn't take my raise. So as a result of that, every Christmas or when school would get started, I'd have a few dollars and I'd take the kids shopping, etc. So they thought we was rich. They, and even when they were younger, at Christmas time, with the 4 boys, I would say, now, you guys decide what you want this Christmas, and I'd buy one big thing, pool table, ping pong table, whatever it is they wanted, that they could share. And then they would get all these other little gifts, and of course the other families would share gifts with them. But I can't think of anything I regret about my childhood. And sometimes I'll ask my children that. And they say, no, Mom. So the only thing that my sons accuse me of is spoiling my youngest son, who didn't leave till he was 33 years old.
Oh, okay.
But I have no regrets about, I think the path that I've gone have helped me to be the person that I am today as I look back. Even though I never had a lot of materialistic stuff, but I've always had what I needed. And what I didn't have, I couldn't miss, you know. So, and that's what I tried to pass on to my children, you know. Now, be satisfied with what you have and thank the Lord for that, you know, because if you look around you and see how things are going with some other folks, then you really should count your blessings.
That's a wonderful legacy that you leave for your children. And I want you to talk about your children, but I want you to go back just a little bit during the time we've had here together, and you were talking about when you settled in East Cleveland. Okay, so what are your fondest memories? What are your earliest memories of East Cleveland? And tell me what life was like then for yourself, your family, as well as what the political climate was like, the physical landscape, anything that you want to say about your earliest memories and when that was. When did you?
Okay. We came to East Cleveland, rather, in 1964. I was living in an apartment, CMHA apartment, and I had heard or read that they were going to start busing school-age children in order to integrate the schools. And as I thought about that, I could not see not being able to get to my children in 5 or 10 minutes from home.
So that was the impetus, the driving force.
The driving force, yeah. And better schools. I'd heard about East Cleveland schools.
Okay.
You know, they were really great during those years back in the 60s. And they still are. I still have a lot of faith in them. But
so how many children did you have at the time you moved to East Cleveland? What were their names and ages, if you remember?
Okay, I have 5. My youngest son was 4. Kenneth was 4. Pam was Pamela, my oldest. She was Pam must have been about 11, 12. And then there was Keith. They're just 9 months apart, so they're almost like twins. And the next was Dwayne and Gregory, and then Kenneth, the youngest. He wasn't in school. He hadn't started school, of course. The other 4 was going to Mayfair Elementary School right here on the corner, which I love the idea of, you know, I could walk to school. I was working, and I was working on 103rd in St. Clair at A&P, Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company. I was a bookkeeper and head checker. And for PTAs and for school counseling and whatever I needed to be at school, my boss when I first started, he'd say, "Do you have to go every time you have a meeting?" I said, "Yes." I said, "I've done all my work, so I'm leaving." And the assistant could be in charge. But that's what I loved about being close to the schools. I remember during the 60s when they was burning Huff and all the things was going on in the Huff area. My youngest son, Kenneth, came into the kitchen. And I guess my husband was watching TV, the other kids was doing their homework or whatever. And so Kenny ran in the kitchen and he was yanking on me and he said, "Mama, Mama." I said, "What? Are we black or white?" I say that, and then I realized, I said, that's a conversation we never had together, whether, you know, who we were, color, etc. And I said, we're black. He says, they're going to burn our house down. I said, no, you're not going to burn our house down. That's not even near us, although it was right on 125th. That just that question from him made me realize that we had never had that kind of conversation about the differences in race, because, you know, they had white friends and black friends and whatever, you know. So then after that, we started talking a little bit more about culture, a little bit, you know, just enough, you know, so they would realize and be proud of what they were. You know, of course, the older one, Pam, you know, Keith, they didn't say too much because I guess they was learning something in school. But anyway, when we moved here that year, we had, I think there was 4 black families on the street. Let's see, the Suttles, the Jennings next door, the folks that are across the street. Now, these are people that are still here. The Willises, the Williams, and those are the only one I can remember. As a matter of fact, the Suttles wasn't here when we moved here, but they came shortly afterward.
Were you close, Annette, since there was
Well,
a few of you?
Since there would, well, not that much at first, because I guess we were all really busy, because the Suttles, they had like 6 or 8 kids, boys, and the kids knew each other, you know. But I just met them, and that was just about it, because I was, you know, with the kids, children younger, going to work and doing the things you had to do here at home. You know, you didn't really have a chance to visit that much, unless we were out in the yard during the summer. But it was really strange, because after the second summer, now all the other houses they were all white. After the second summer, I was outside, and I realized, I said, where did everybody go?
So this
When
would
did
have
they
been
move out?
1967,
That was yeah. I was in about 67, going maybe going as late as the 70s before everybody moved out.
So you questioned that.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any answers? Did you find out what was going on?
Well, I found out. Let's see. Oh, there was a little white church right on the corner of 4. Cute little church, ideal looking little country church. So one morning, I got up one Sunday morning, and I said, oh, I'm moving slow. I don't have time to get the kids to Sunday school. So I dressed them, got them. I said, you guys hurry up and get dressed. Go to Sunday school on the corner. So I had them looking as cute as I wanted them. And they went to the church on the corner. So shortly after that, they came home. I said, what happened? And Pam said, Mama, they said we couldn't come to that church. We had to go to the church at the Y. We wasn't allowed to come there.
Wow. How did that impact your children? What were your thoughts?
My thoughts were, what kind of people are we living around, you know? And of course, I didn't take them to the Y. I went up, and I just stood in the back of the church with my kids. And then I just turned around and walked out and went on to my own church. Of course, I was a little kind of rebellious, because I led pickets and whatnot sometime along the way.
Before you got to East Cleveland?
No, I had one in East Cleveland.
Okay, we're gonna
yeah. So I belonged to, by me going to PTA and I was on the 1970, yeah. I was on the Education Task Force. And I was looking, that's why I had this notebook here. I was looking at some of the minutes a couple days ago after you start talking about this, where I was on the task force, and I was reading some of the conversation. And our conversations were basically around the separation of the students at the schools and the lack of communication in the schools.
And natural segregation of the students?
Yeah, the white students in cliques, the black students in cliques, and that kind of thing. And so in one of the minutes I was reading, the superintendent of schools, was the superintendent or somebody, well, whoever was on the committee, he was talking about that so much, and he asked, when he started talking about that, and my comment is in the minutes, it says, well, they're doing the same thing you guys are doing. I say, you don't come to my house, you don't invite me to yours, so they're doing the same thing. What else do you expect? Something to that effect, and because that's in the minutes. And then I know one time.
Do you remember the response? Or
yeah, it's in the minutes there. I'll show you that later.
Okay, but for the sake of this conversation, this interview, can you tell us what you recall in terms of the reaction to your statement?
I don't think they gave a verbal statement, but they were just, from what I can recall, they just looked at me strange, as if you got a lot of nerve, kind of thing.
What was the percentages of blacks and whites at that time at the school?
At the schools, I think it was like about 60-40, something like that. But it still was a high percentage, 60 white.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a higher percentage of white at the time than it was black students. And then I know when I went to one of the meetings, I can remember this real well. One of the folks asked me, well, what do you all want for your children? I said, what do you want for yours? The same thing. That was basically my answer. But we went through a lot of that until finally I went to a Kiwanis meeting, and I don't think they was going to in the Y at that time. I think they were going from home to home. So I invited them here. And of course my husband said, why you do that? But
and
nevertheless.
What was the purpose? Why were they?
Well, because I was trying to show, they wasn't meeting, I don't know whether, I can't remember whether it was a special meeting they was meeting in homes.
Okay.
But I know
it was for the purpose of meeting. They weren't just paying people visits just to see what's going on. It was for the purpose of meeting. To tackle the racial divide.
Right. Okay. That's the word. So anyway, I did that, and I guess in the 70s.
So they came to your.
They came to the house. Yeah, they came to the house. You know, and of course I did my little coffee and tea thing, and they had their meeting, and so after that things sort of leveled out a little bit.
In terms of the
relationship
and
the participations, and then I guess I was appointed. Oh, that's getting to the political part.
That's okay.
Oh,
still
yeah, I was appointed to the CA Citizens Advisory Committee by the then manager, either Gaskill or Grant Anthrop, one of the two.
When what position did they hold?
They was, it's the same, it's in existence now, but the council don't use it to their advantage as much as they should. They just started it. It was about 50 of us, and I have the minutes from that as well. It's 1970. We was looking at the charter, and at that time, the commissioners received $100 a year. So we was trying to increase their salary to $1,200, and the president of the commission to $15. It was voted down. So I believe when I went on the commission in 1983, I believe we was getting $100 a year then.
How many commissioners were there?
5. And there was a proposal to have 7. And there was also a proposal to break the city up into wards. And that was all turned down. So all the things that they're doing now, it's not new. You know, folks think that's something that they just thought of doing, but that was in 1972, 1970, and I have all that in the minutes.
So you saw the flight.
I saw the flight.
When did you, and you, it seems, did it seem like it was really overnight, really quickly?
It was.
And how did that make you feel? You saw people moving out, people moving in. So, sounds like the record, doesn't it? Temptation, ball of confusion. So, how was it changing? How did it appear?
Well, to me, it appeared that they were running away from the black families because the black families was moving in a lot on a fast pace.
Were you aware of redlining? Did you know that was going on?
I wasn't aware of redlining then until I was on the council for a while. But my feeling was at that time, that's why I worked so hard in the community, trying to be as involved as I could, is my feeling was I can be better than them. You know, this can be an ideal black community. So if they want to go, let them go. Whoever want to leave, let them leave. But if enough of us get together and make this an ideal community, black community, then so it's on them. Let them go. But I guess the things that my parents had instilled in us is the fact that they're not better than me. If anything, since I have to work harder to get there, I'll be better than them. Because it's usually much more difficult for a black to get in certain areas because they have to be a level above, you know. Well, that's my perception of it anyway. But it was a white flight, you know. And the thing that I learned later was that there was a lot of corruption. Even when the commissioners when it was a manager commission form of government, the infrastructure was going bad before we came, and then after we got here, you know, then it's blamed on the people that are here. As a matter of fact, when we bought this house in '64, the inspectors came out, and they went on the 3rd floor. And they said, oh, this is not on file. My 3rd floor is complete. Kitchen, 2 bedrooms, living room, complete baths. Now, the families before us rented it out, but it wasn't on file. But we had to pay to keep it as it is. As a matter of fact, I still pay, and nobody lived there. I paid all the while my children was here, because the kids couldn't move up there, because, well, you imagine five of us down here. They couldn't go up there until they were 16. The boys went up when they were 16, but my daughter never did want to stay up there. And we had to pay a fee to keep that license on the 3rd floor. Even though we have nobody there, you know, it'd have to be grandfathered in, because they're not issuing them anymore in the city. At least they're not supposed to be issuing them. I don't know what they're doing now. So, and that was one of the other things that, you know, they just sort of bury their head in the sand about a lot of things that was going on in the city. And then when blacks start moving in, then the inspections got so high. I mean, you know, so regular, especially on the double families and on all the families, you know. So
you're talking about how you have seen the city change over time, and I want you to continue to elaborate on that. You've also talked about what you think contributed to some of those changes. Was there a lot of, did they sell their houses, or were there a lot of absentee landlords? Were they rented the house from
They were selling the houses. They were selling the houses, yeah. And then in those years also, it's about 1970, 75, I don't know, maybe later, in the 70s. That's when the city received a big chunk of money, huge chunk of money, the most they'd ever given to any community. I forgot the amount of, but during that time it was a big chunk. So they started a survey. As a matter of fact, I walked the street interviewing people, because I would always participate. I'd get out there, even if I was working, come from work or wherever, you know, and interviewed people about moving on Hayden Avenue. The company was A.D. Little that came in. It's a planning company. They demolished the buildings on Hayden, because on Hayden Avenue we had savings and loans, we had a bakery, we had grocery stores. We didn't have to go up to Superior and Euclid or up to Severance, because we had everything right on Hayden Avenue. You know, because I never remembered having to go to them. I could send my kids to the store, you know, there. There was a Lawson's on the corner where those stores on the corner of 2nd. I don't know if you know about Lawson's. But, you know, we had everything right here in the community. So anyway, this company came in. They got this huge chunk of money. They came in and they did the blueprints. They demolished the buildings, were supposed to relocate businesses, which they did not, and they were supposed to relocate families that needed to be relocated. To my knowledge, they didn't relocate too many people. And as a matter of fact, the land stayed vacant on Hayden for a long time. The commissioners that were on board at the time, was May Stewart, Wallace Davis, Edith Head. I can't think of another person. I have it in the minutes.
And this is what period of time?
This was in the 70s, late 70s. They started to demolish everything up there in the 70s.
And they stayed?
They stayed vacant until, I can't remember the year that Silverman's came in.
Okay. So around that time.
Around that.
And what was the reason that was given to the demolition? Was it condition of the structure, or
probably maybe that conditions of the structure, but to me, they were historical buildings, and because they opened an office up right on Hayden, right across from where the old laundromat is on Hayden, on Doan and the other street next to it. But anyway, the office was up there because I would on my off day, I would go in there and work. And we came up with the Helen S. Brown Center, you know, during those days, because I worked with Miss Brown, who was the founder of Helen S. Brown. I worked with her. And Carolyn is another gal. I can't think of her name now. But anyway, and then they were supposed to build this multipurpose center over where MLK is now. Years pass, no buildings going up. And then all of a sudden, the money had got away. And they was down to just not as much as they needed to build the multipurpose center, because it was supposed to have been something like they have in Cleveland Heights now, in all that land over there. So, to keep it from getting away completely, they threw the shell of a building, which I hate MLK Center, because it's not what it was supposed to be. You know, it's supposed to have been a skating ring, because, you know, when, I don't know if you guys were here, but, you know, my sons used to go ice skating. We had a public swimming pool, public pool.
And where was this?
Over there where Chambers is now.
Chambers Elementary
Yeah,
School.
yeah.
Do you remember the street?
On Shaw, right on Shaw.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember one year I bought the guys hockey sticks, and someone came in and said, "Black kids don't play hockey." I said, "My sons play hockey because we have a skating ring, ice skating ring, you know." And they was good at hockey, you know. Anyway, I think East Cleveland was the only city, small city, that had a public swimming pool. Plus, we had a pool at Shaw High. Now we have no pool. Well, I thought about that for a long time, but there was so much going on in this community, as small as it is, until it was, to me, it was the ideal place to live. And
that was before the white flight, the earlier part of white flight. I mean, what period of time were we talking about?
Well, the white flight took place so quick until it was after the white flight. It was still ideal. Yeah, because when I got on the commission and then the council, I would go to the National League of Cities and talk about our city. And people was amazed at the things that was going on here. As a matter of fact, I was treasurer of the Greater Cleveland Suburban Council with all the other suburban communities, council, not Cleveland. Cleveland wasn't involved at that time, but it was all the suburbs. And they would have their meetings at like Palmer and other places, you know. And so after I became treasurer, I said, well, we're going to have the meeting in East Cleveland. And they said, well, somebody in the meeting said, well, that's too far. I said, it's the same distance from my place it is to your place. I said, I'm not coming to another meeting if you can't have them in East Cleveland. And when they came to East Cleveland, they had heard so much garbage about the city until they were shocked.
Where did the meeting take place?
At City Hall.
At City Hall.
I had it in the council room. We had a conference room up there. Well, the chief's taken our room up. I don't know how they let that happen, but nevertheless. When I was on council, I said the council needs a room to have citizens come in, to have our meetings. We need a room. The mayor at that time was Mayor Davis. He says, well, we don't have a room. I said, okay. So the next meeting he came to, he said, what you going to do? I said, we're going to take your office. He said, what? I said, yeah, because this building belonged, the council have the last say-so about this building. I said, so if you can't give us this room, we'll take your office and you can take this room. So, of course, we made the move. And I don't know why and how the legislative body allowed any mayor to take their conference room. You know, where do you go if you want to talk to a counselor?
Conference room.
What conference room?
Right. Oh,
They don't.
There is.
No, they don't have a room. So we had a private. We had a room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a private room that I could, because I would go up to City Hall practically every day, every other day when I was president, of course, and when I was on council. And I needed a room to work in and to keep all my papers. I wasn't going to lug everything home. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how they manage now. I really don't. That's what I tell Joy. I said, I don't know how you guys manage now. It's crazy, you know.
What years did you serve on council? How many times re-elected? And you already mentioned that it was mayor under Mayor Davis. All of
Mayor Davis and city managers. We had city managers like musical chairs. That's because the council appointed the manager of the city, and it only took 3 votes. Okay, if 2 of those people didn't like the manager and the other person moved over, we could fire a manager of the city when I first went on. And that's what was happening. We had maybe 5 or 6 different managers because of the politics. So as a result of that, plus we wasn't getting our piece of the pie from the county. They used the demographics of East Cleveland for years, but we wasn't getting the right proportion of that pie as a result of them using our city and our demographics in order to get the federal funding that the county was getting.
Meaning they would include parts of East Cleveland into their
Cuyahoga County.
Into the whole, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did that change you at all?
The only way that changed is when we changed the form of government. Several of the people was against that. Several of the people that was on the commission and council at that time, they was against the change. But that was the only way we had to become, quote unquote, more political, because it was non-political with the manager commission form of government. Mm-hmm. And personally, I like the manager commission form of government better.
Because?
Because it's running a business. The manager is a businessman. He runs the city like a big business, you know. And he don't have to be political. He don't have to be out here yelling and screaming about what the council does and what this does. He wouldn't have to, didn't have to do that. But I think the thing that I didn't like about it was the council had the authority to hire and fire him. Or the commission. The commission had the authority to do that. So that's the part I didn't like. So I led a thing in 1984 to change the form of government. There's another person that goes around talking about they are responsible for it, and I think somebody knows who I'm talking about. But I was in the attorney's office in Terminal Tower every day working on that.
Do you feel comfortable saying who that is?
No, I'm not going to say because I don't, okay. No. But
again, when did you serve on council? What years and all of the administrations? I started
in '83 on the commission.
Okay.
Started as a commissioner. That was with May Stewart, Wallace Davis, Edith Head. The president of council at that time, Davis, he appointed me chair of the finance committee. When I got ready to call my first meeting, he says, well, why are you calling your finance committee meeting? I said, because I don't know anything about the operation of the city. So I started with calling the judge in. And he wasn't able to produce a lot of records. And I put it in the minutes, and I made some stuff public, that really made me nervous. My husband said I run my mouth too much. But as a result of some of the things that happened in those finance committee meetings, there was an investigation. And the investigation from the auditors came, and they hauled all the records out of East Cleveland through the front room window, the file cabinets. They opened up the windows, put a dolly in, in the window in the front, and took file cabinets out of the judge's office and out of the finance office. I was at a skating party because we had at MLK, and somebody told me that what was going on. That was in 1984. What was going on? So I'm new on council, on the commission. So I told my husband, I said, I'm going to go up to City Hall. He said, you don't need to go. I said, I'm going. You drive me up there, I'm going. And I went up and asked them what they were doing. They said they was taking the files. I said, what do you have to give you the authority? Meanwhile, I'm new on the commission. Mrs. Stewart didn't come, Wallace Davis didn't come. I was the only one there watching them haul all the records out.
Was the press there?
They were, I believe they were out front, yeah. Yeah, because they had pictures, they had all kind of stuff. But anyway.
So what was the result?
The results was, I asked to see the records. And I went down to the county building. They had just dumped our records in a room. Just dumped them. So, as a matter of fact, a person got up at the last council meeting and was making a statement about it. And I told them after the meeting, council meeting, I say, some of the things you said was not true. He says, why you say that? I said, because I was there. He says, I was too. I said, well, you must have been hiding because I didn't see you.
Okay. So what was it? What was the...
So after that, that's when the corruption, they unveiled. The judge went to jail. The finance director was investigated.
The judge who?
Judge Mosley, I guess. Yeah, Mosley. Judge Mosley was incarcerated. The finance director, Jack Urban, was indicted. I don't know if he ever served any time. They investigated Wallace Davis, May Stewart, the Edith Head, and Willie Pace. I was the only one that wasn't investigated because I was new. I didn't know what was going on. And at the public meeting, when they said how much Wallace Davis owed, he went in his pocket and pulled out his money and paid. Edith Head didn't have any money. So I believe Miss Head served some time. And I believe Mr. Pace served some time. And I don't know what I don't know whether I should be mentioning these names. I probably don't. I don't know whether I want these names, and you know. But
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It's good that you're doing this, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So anyway, I know Miss Head served some time, which I felt really bad for her. And I think Mr. Pace served some time. The other two didn't serve any time. Okay. But I think somebody's son was in trouble as a result of some of that. And all of it, a lot of it was involved with the AD Little money, the monies that we received from the federal government to build the MLK Center.
Okay, now you mentioned that someone at council most recently talked about what happened,
mm-hmm.
and what did they say happened?
They said that they didn't touch some of the files in the courts. Well, I know that the files some of the files in the courts was taken out through the back door, sneaked out of the back door. So that's why I told them, I said, you didn't tell the whole truth. I said, you must have been the one that was hiding, because I was there.
Okay.
No, none of the other commissioners would come up to the building. Nobody. Nobody. And I stayed there all night until they finished. And I just sat there in the hall and watched, because I didn't know what to do. They had their papers. Sheriff was there. You know, I'm a little neophyte, so I didn't know. But I know I said, well, I was elected. I'm supposed to just sit here and see what's happening. Anyway, after that, I came out of office. That's when we started the change of the form of government. And Mr. Fisher and I can't think of the other attorney's name. Oh, he was in, their office was in the Terminal Tower, and they lived over in Bracknell. I was making trips to their home and to the office to create the change of the charter. And then, of course, when we got ready to, some other people came out and started lobbying for it after all the language was in place. But they didn't put the language in place. It was a white attorney, not a black attorney. So, and he had previously been the city law director who I was working with. That's how I knew him. But anyway, that's when I went to Congressman Stokes. I went to National League of Cities. One time I went and I talked to the congressman, and I love him. And I had my little agenda. And I was asking for a certain amount of money. And he says, well, Gladys, that's just a drop in the bucket. We can't deal with that little bit of money. I said, well, you can give us some of the big money. My feelings were so hurt. But nevertheless, after that, that's when I started working with him and asking him about the legislation that he put together that only the city of East Cleveland fit into the parameters of what the legislation said. And so we were the only one that got that funding from HUD, because I think it's under 50,000 you had to have, and we was under 50,000 at that time in a city, a home rule city, something like that.
Do you remember what the award amount was at that time?
No, I don't. I probably have it in some of my papers. I saved too much stuff. I keep saying I'm going to dump all this stuff. I have minutes. That's why I was saying I could remember I pulled out this stuff. This is from 1969, from where I served on a couple of committees. And I save stuff, especially where I have my name on it, so that if anything comes up, I can say, well, here it is in writing. Here's the legislation, da-da-da-da. But anyway, after he created the legislation, then that's when we became entitlement city, and that's when I came out of office. So I served 2 years, 1983 to 1985. Served 2 years there. I came out and started working on the charter change and lobbying to get people to vote for the changes and whatnot. I stayed out for 2 years, and when the charter was changed, we changed it to mayor council with the 5 councilors. We had 5 commissioners, we had 5 councils, and they were all running at large, nonpartisan. So I went back and I pulled these out so I could remember. I came out in 83, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. I guess I went back and served four 2-year terms. Stayed out 2 years, served 4 2-year terms. And then I came out again to take care of my aging parents, because it was just getting a little bit too much. And because my mother and father lived upstairs. And I stayed out for 2 years and went back, I guess, in 2001 and served, I think I served 2 4-year terms. I served about 16 to 20 years, I don't know, on council. And each time, well, I was elected president most of the time. One time I was elected and then they removed me. After about 2 months, they got together and voted me out. But that was fine, because when you're president and chairing an organization, you can't express yourself as much because you have to listen to other people and you have to keep the meeting in order. So you can't be as vocal as some of the other people. So I didn't mind at all. But then they voted me back in the next year. So I was president most of the time that I was on council. I was president of council. And then I think back, I said, well, was I really strong enough, or, you know? But then I say, I was who I am, so. But anyway,
Well,
it's a lot of stuff.
Sharing, you know, the various ways the city has changed over time, and so that we don't leave anything out. I know you covered the political climate very well. You even talked about some of the housing, the codes, and how that changed. And you talked about the urban renewal that was slowed, and the reason why. Is there anything else in terms of the types of individuals coming into East Cleveland? Have you seen, what kind of changes have you seen as it relates to them?
I think we have a lot of absentee landlords now, a lot of rental property. Early on, it wasn't a lot of rental. If it was rental, it was like a family. But now, it's okay. People have to have places to live. But seem like a lot of folks have lost faith in elected officials. And unless we go out and promote our own city, then we're not going to have anybody coming in. Too often I hear people talking too much about the negative part of East Cleveland, even the elected officials. I don't remember doing that too much when I was elected. I don't do it now. I don't, just in this conversation. But if I'm at a meeting and they know I'm in the room, some of my buddies will jump up and say, don't talk about East Cleveland, Walcott's in the room. You know, some of the organizations, like, you know, Black Political Action Committee that I belong to. And I worked with the congressman in the, 21st Congressional District. I worked with Arnold Pinckney, you know. I worked with a lot of the guys, you know. I helped run a lot of campaigns here in East Cleveland, presidential as well as Barbara Boyd, Representative Claudette Woodard, and a lot of them. So I don't have any regrets about what I've done or what, you know, but I do feel very sad. That's why I don't go to council meeting. You know, it almost brings tears to my eyes to see what's going on up there now, you know. And I talk to them, not in public, one-on-one, but I call them one-on-one. Mildred, I loved Mildred Brewer, you know. We worked together. She was just, her personality was just different from mine. You know, that's all. But, you know, and then I might not have been the easiest person to get along with, because once I made my mind up, I would stick to my guns, even if I was the only one voting on something. But then, on the other hand, at the next session, if I did some research and I came back and discovered that I wanted to go a different route, then I try to explain that. That's what I try to tell them privately sometime. It only takes a couple sentences to explain what that legislation is about. Don't sit there and say, we voted, it was on first reading last time, we had a committee meeting, now we're ready to vote. Now call for the vote. That's a no-no. That is definitely a no-no. And
have you seen any changes with you talking to them?
A little bit. Okay. Joy changed it a little bit. Because I told her, I said, that's terrible. People need to know what you're doing. They don't know about that legislation. All it's doing is giving the preamble. Everybody don't know what you're talking about. You don't know whether, when you say the city is receiving $2 million, well, if they're receiving it, what is the city's match from the general fund? What is it for? Now, when you use it, say something about we have accomplished da 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 as a result of the money we received. But I don't hear that enough. But I get it, and I know the reason because I talk to the clerk all the time.
There is a citizens group, a citizens advisory group.
CAC.
Did you have an advisory group during your administration?
Yes.
And did you feel that it was beneficial? And if you know anything about the current advisory committee, can you talk about that and answer, tell us whether or not you feel there's some positive things that are coming out of that or not?
I have not. I think I went to one of their meetings. So they are, the ones that are there now, I don't think they have a full board. I think each counselor can appoint 10 people. So it could be a body of 50 people. Like when I was on it in the earlier days before I got into the council and commission, I served on it. And it was about at least 50 people, 45, 50 people on it throughout the city, business people, educators, lay person, which I consider myself, I'm a lay person. And it was very beneficial to me during the time that I was on because I would try to attend the meetings and I always would try to get their reports of what they're discussing, and to see if the council could implement it or they needed anything from the council. I don't know. I know they've appointed people already, but I think my biggest beef now is why they haven't appointed, not they, the administration, appointed a charter review commission. There's no charter review commission in place. They talk about all the things that's in the charter that's obsolete. Well, you can change it. Appoint a charter review commission. And they don't have one in place to change all those things that they have to vote on up there, If the salary is too low, sure, $40,000 is way too low for a mayor, But then you have to do it the right way. And I have shared this with the mayor. I said, you know how to change that? You knew you was going in office. Okay. You could have done it while you was on council, president of council. And you wouldn't have all this other garbage going on now. You could have changed it, And because we had tried to change it at one point, and it didn't get through. We didn't get it to the ballot or something at one point, sometime when I was on council. And it didn't get, didn't get to the ballot. But yes, any group that is appointed, and it's all in the book, they have all kind of groups that they can appoint to assist them, They have a cable review committee. I had a cable review committee to review that cable. I don't understand for the world of me what's going on with that cable. We had people on the Cable Review Commission appointed, you know, and it wasn't just, who was on that? I can't think of his name. I can't think of the man's name. But he knew a lot about cable, and, you know, they'd monitor the cable stations and meet with the cable guy and meet with us. As a matter of fact, council is in control of the cable, but I don't know what in the world is going on. We had the cables. The cable was right there in the office. We had our own camera. And I don't know what happened to it. We bought a camera while I was there because we wanted people to go out and do things in the community that the regular guy might not be able to do. So we purchased the camera. Now, what happened to it? See, it's like I say that because whenever I go to council meetings, somebody will say, "Well, why don't you get up and say something?" I said, "No, I don't need to say anything. Y'all listened to me 20 years."
When you were on council, was that also your modus operandi? You felt that you would talk to people one-on-one as opposed to voicing it, you know, when you were in session?
Yes.
So that was not just now. That's just how you.
Yeah. I talked to the people in my committee meetings, and one-on-one. But as far as like the other week, I heard somebody say, "Well, the council was in such and such a place." They have a law that the council can't be in places discussing legislation and what is it called? Mine went blank. Nevertheless, they can't meet in a place and discuss what's going on at council anymore. Not 3 of them.
Okay.
2 of them can, but not 3.
Okay.
Huh? Okay.
Now, what about your children during all, you know, this time when you were
Everybody thought when I'd run for office, they thought I had this huge committee of people. I had a core group that I worked with, but I had contacts in the community when I had something public or needed to get literature dropped, and that kind of stuff. My sons would come in from California, Denver, get off the plane and go on the polls.
I'm sure they loved that.
And the thing is, see, by them going to school in East Cleveland, they knew a lot of people. And my children knew a lot of people. And that, my stepchildren would do the same. So I had all these people, but they were my family. You know, I had people on the Cleveland police force, but nobody know who my family is on the force. So they come in. But
so did any of them get involved, or any of them politically oriented now, or?
No. They, who said, one of my grandkids just said he was taking political science. He might get in. He says, "I might follow in your footsteps, Grandma." I said, "Okay, that'd be good. Just keep it honest." Okay. But no, they were very supportive, you know, because with the computer age and email and all that stuff, you know, if I needed some research or whatever I needed, you know, I could contact them and they'd just email it to me. I would say I need to develop a letter, and I'm going to say da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So you do the language, because I'm not good at sentence structure and I don't want to look bad on paper, you know, that kind of thing. So they were very supportive, and my husband wasn't political either. He wasn't. He was involved. As a matter of fact, my second husband, Albert, he was Catholic. And he was more so involved in the Catholic Church, the Hunger Center, Knights and Ladies of Peter Claver, and all that kind of stuff. But he was very supportive until he would come to council meetings. And one time he came to council meetings and he was going to start, somebody said something to me, and he was ready to get violent. So I told him, no more council meetings for you. You stay home. But yeah, all of them was very supportive. As a matter of fact, my dad would work on the polls. You know, my mother would be home making food, you know, in the earlier days. So it was, because we have a really large family, you know, right here in the city. But I see it's not necessary for people to know who my family is.
Right. Well, by number, how many of your family are in East Cleveland, without naming them?
None.
None of them. Okay.
Not now.
Okay.
No, none of them now. One's in Cleveland now.
Okay.
I have a daughter in the courts, she's the magistrate
Okay.
in Cleveland.
Okay. Now, what are your fondest memories of East Cleveland?
Oh, I guess I would say the earlier days when I would go to the baseball games that the kids was in, go to the Chiefs games, and go to the Shaw High School game. I was with the Booster Club. And the street club meetings, we had, instead of, we had civic associate, okay, this was back in between the late 60s and up until the 80s, I guess. We had civic associations then, and it was based on the school district. We're in the Mayfair district. I must have had 8 or 10 street clubs that was organized in the Mayfair district, in the school district. Then they had the Prospect district, the Chambers district. So they had civic associations, and then we would get together when there was something big that we wanted to do. And that worked very well back in the earlier days. And it was really nice going to those meetings and meeting all the people on the other streets, you know. And we had, as a matter of fact, I had a list of the names of street club presidents during that time, that we'd get together and plan different things. I think I just enjoy doing things that make the community better, make people happy. I think I'm on my high when that's going. As the kids like, Mom, you really get high on that. I said, well, it's what I enjoy doing. So, and when they would go, you know, they could go ice skating, and, you know, they'd go up to Forest Hills, and I'd try to find them. They'd be in the woods. They'd go skiing on Ski Hill, you know, because they would let them ski up there at the time. Before we had the Martin Luther King Civic Center, the recreation office was right in the little building right next to City Hall. That's where their office was. They worked out of there. There was a building right next to City Hall where the parking lot is. That was really long time ago.
So where did they park the police cars? They're parking there now.
I don't know. I guess they parked in the back.
And they still had room.
They still had room. Personally, I just don't feel like the police should take up all that space. I used to tell the chief about that, because where the citizens going to park when they come? There should be a section for citizen parking. I shouldn't have to walk across the street when I want to come, you know, to pay water, do whatever I need to do up there. And then it was nice to just go up to Lawson's, go to the bakery. Savings and Loan was on the corner, you know. It's Shaw, and as a matter of fact, the building is there. Maybe some of the entrepreneurs will develop and do something with that building. It's a historical building. And the sign is still there, Savings and Loan, right on Hayden. That's the only one that's still there, you know. And the street, I enjoyed the street club meetings, having the meetings here. My husband was president, and I was president, and whatnot. So, and we'd go from house to house. It was nice. It was nice. And I still think East Cleveland is more like a neighborhood instead of a city, because you almost know practically everyone, every family that's been here a while. You know, as I look at some of the names that I see now and the people that I see, you know, your family's like, even across the street here, directly, diagonal in front of me. That family's been here. I guess they came a couple of years after we did. Now, there's a couple of houses on the street that either the grandchildren or the children live in, bought. And we had some company to come last summer, I guess, and they told my sister, well, all those guys sitting over there, we were kind of nervous about putting our car on the street. So we told them, you better be nervous if they're not sitting there. Because they're second and third generation. And I know them, even incidents that happen on the street when they get on the wrong road and go the wrong way, you know. Some of them will come over and say, parents will say, well, Miss Walcott, what can we do? I know somebody got caught with their car and police took his car. I said, you go up, and they wouldn't release his car. So I said, you go up to City Hall and you talk to the officer in charge as nice as you know how to be. Be polite, be nice. If he curse you out, still be nice, you know. And they'll give you your son's car keys to go get his car from wherever they store the cars. And so she came back. She said, Miss Walcott, I got the keys. I said, okay. I said, all you have to do is respect people, respect their position. You have to respect their position. No matter what they're doing, you respect their position, you know. So, anyway, because that's on them, how they act. But anyway, what was I supposed to be talking about?
Well, you did that. You were
about my fondest members.
Your fondest memories of East Cleveland. And I know you were involved with the garden.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
has to be some fond memories associated with that.
Yeah.
Even before, because that's when, you know, I had a garden plot in the same place.
Yeah.
So, tell us the name of the plot. The garden.
It's EC Grows, and it's just
located?
capital EC, not East Cleveland spelled out. It's EC Grows Community Garden, and it's directly across the street from Court Road Farmers Market. They've been there over 75 years. It's they're under Court Road Farmers Market Preservation Society. That's the full name of the market over there. 7 years ago, I went to a workshop, and Mark McLean called me. My dad was ill, and he said, I was home taking care of my parents. He said, come on, I think you might like to go to this meeting. And that Saturday, I had nothing to do. I said, oh, okay, as long as it's going to be a couple of hours. So I went to the meeting. It's at the library on Superior, down past 7 and 9, down there someplace. And he and I was the only people there other than the presenter. So as a result of that, I had an opportunity to do a one-on-one with her. And she talked about utilizing abandoned properties, unused land, parking lots, and beautification of a city. And right away, a light bulb went off. I said, oh, we got a lot of that in East Cleveland. And so we had a conversation at the farmer's market. And I said, yeah, if you want to use it, use it. So we cleaned the weeds were like this. It was about 6 of us, so we started cleaning the weeds off. Then the gal from the health department, she came over, she and her buddies came over, and they started helping us to clean the lot off. And
it was an asphalt
it's
lot.
it's all asphalt.
Yes.
That entire area, all the way back on both sides, is all asphalt. And of course, I started going to these sessions, learning how to build raised beds. And I went to the workshops, and at that time, OSU Extension was providing all the funding for the lumber and the soil, because it's all organic. That was fascinating to me. And building the beds on asphalt was exciting. And then I discovered that it's therapeutic. My dad was ill. I was home a lot, and when he got ill, he was a screamer. He screamed. They could hear him across the street. And so it was, it was real therapeutic for me to get out there and dig in the dirt and then so on. So we started out with about 4 or 5 raised beds. We built them. Levito Hill was working with us at that time, and Miss Michele Hill for a minute.
No relation.
No relation. And we built the beds, and we had about 5 or 6 beds. Well, anyway, now we have 62 raised beds and 35 volunteers that work on the beds. A lot of people have their individual beds, things that they want to grow, but then I have a contract they have to sign of certain things they can and cannot do. And they have to sign off. I have a waiver for those that don't want their individual beds for them to sign off on, so that they can't hold OSU or Farmers Market, who owns the land, they own the land, responsible for anything that might happen over there. Up until 2 years ago, OSU was funding us with the help of the health department, But they dropped us. They said, after so many years, you know how to do it yourself, and you can apply for the grants. So Neighborhood Connections decided to include East Cleveland finally last year. And so I applied for the grant, and I was awarded the grant to help to, buy all the supplies we need. So now we're applying for another grant. We raise everything. We even have watermelons, cantaloupes, corn, asparagus, lettuces, all kinds of greens, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, red potatoes, all kinds of tomatoes. So it's really, and folks get to meet other people that they wouldn't know normally. And then we also supply some recipes of how to prepare some of the foods. We have a festival every year, which is really great. This year we had, we have from 75 to 100 people attending the festival. We prepare foods that we grow in the garden, have people sample the foods. And then we may have a table of our harvest, and folks that want tomatoes or lettuce or greens or whatever we've harvested, then they can just take it. If they choose to leave us a donation, they can. We don't sell anything. People keep asking me, shouldn't we sell? I said, no, I don't believe in selling, because if people need food, I'd rather just give it away. And if anybody come past, they want some tomatoes, I just give it to them. And so we can't eat all of this anyway. It fall on the ground, and we're using the compost. So, and then folks was concerned about no fence. I said, no, I don't believe in fences either. And so now we have people on that are members. Well, Gladys, we need a fence because some of my tomatoes was gone. I said, so? Either somebody was hungry or an animal got in the garden, but they didn't take it all. So this year we had a great project. You have to go by and see it. The artist Ed Parker painted the guardrail with some students and volunteer artists, and they painted vegetables and flowers all alongside on the guardrails. So it really looked nice. So we have a lot of plans for this year. I was more fascinated about the sweet potatoes. I couldn't believe we had sweet potatoes like this. And everybody wanted the sweet potatoes. But it's really therapeutic, and I go up there for 2 hours, and I end up staying 6 or 7. And I have a young man that used to come up and help me do the landscaping, but he don't come anymore, so I have to get in touch with him. And he was such a sweetheart. I love him. You know, he'd bring his children, and he'd come, and they'd work. And we have people that come by and just stop by and say, "Can I have some more greens or some green tomatoes?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Now, you want to help us pull these weeds?" So it's nice.
Since we're talking about plants, I know we were involved in the orchard.
Oh yeah, that was nice. Yeah, the fruit orchard.
The fruit orchard.
Yeah,
which is
up at McGregor, you know, on that big. I don't know how they have about like a half an acre or so of fruit trees, and of course we have 3. We just have 3 trees because when they was giving them away, they would only give us 3 trees. So I had 2 pear trees was planted. You have to plant them together.
You're talking
And
about
in the community garden. And I have 1 peach tree. So we planned to buy some. Excuse me. Get another peach tree or apple tree. Of course, you don't need a partner for the apple tree because they say it'll just grow as long as there's. I was excited about that. As long as there's an apple tree in the neighborhood, you don't need to plant another apple tree with it. They're cross-pollination for the apple trees. So we have berries, so we was going to do berries. But that was really nice up at McGregor. They got that award. As a matter of fact, I saw something online I'm going to apply for. But it was really nice setting, and I can't wait to see some of the harvest. I don't know if they were miniature trees. They were miniature trees. They're not the big ones, I don't think. Yeah, they're all miniature trees. So
they will eventually. They'll grow.
Oh.
That's how they start out.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
The pruning, it all is indicative of the pruning, and there were like 5 different types of fruits there.
Okay. Yeah, so that was nice. I had gone to a workshop once before on planting trees. So at the time, we couldn't figure out how to get through the asphalt. So we rented a piece of equipment from Home Depot and dug down deep enough in order to plant the trees. So we meet 2 times a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays during the season. Our first meeting is the 16th of March, which is late for us. We usually meet in February, but we're going to meet then at the library. So.
Well, Gladys, we talked about issues having to deal with racism, and we know how it impacted your parents and also you. Tell me how you feel that has impacted the city of East Cleveland. Do you know any neighbors who experienced out-and-out racism? Or your children, as they were, any experiences they had in school? And of course,
one of my sons had an experience in school early on. I would usually check their papers, sometime during the week and the reports and whatnot. And his grades had been very good. And they failed him. But this particular teacher hadn't given any kind of warning or whatever, notice about his grades are dropping, but his grades hadn't dropped. So I went over to school and I asked her why, to try to find out. She says, well, he's just so solemn, he never smiles. I said, that's why you failed him? Yes, he's got to learn to be a little bit more outgoing. I said, but that's not in his personality. That have absolutely nothing to do academically. So she said, well, the grade stands. I said, okay. So I went to the superintendent, and he wanted to know, well, I was Henderson. Miss Henderson, what do you want us to do? I said, I want you to give him a test him, and put him in his regular grade, because by not passing him, that's going to have a bigger effect on him, because he worked hard, and he don't have to smile if he don't feel like smiling, So he took the test, and of course, when he went back to school, he had, they had already received the documentation that they would put him in the upper level, because he had not, it was an error on the teacher's part.
What grade did he end up getting? Or did they?
Oh, he got A's and B's.
That particular teacher. It went from an F to...
She never changed his grade. That was it. She never changed the grade. But she just, the final grade was an F. Yeah, the final grade, she failed him. So that was the only thing. I thought that was kind of racist. And of course, after they were all kind of outgoing, after they started to show, I didn't have any problems. A couple of times I went up to school. I'd pop into school all different times, and I went up there once, and one of the teachers, the young teachers, was sitting in the room with a bunch of the male students. And so I went back and I asked, I said, I asked the principal, is that a teacher or a student? And they said, she's a teacher. And I told her, I said, I wish you'd go back there and see how she's sitting with all those young men. So she went back, and she brought her out, and she had a little chat with her, because I just pop into school. And then, what other incident? This wasn't racist. This was one of the teachers' counselor boxed one of my sons, knocked him down in the hall or something. And so they called me over to the school, and they said, well, you'll probably want to have a hearing. I said, okay, wait, let me talk to the teacher, to the counselor first. So I talked to the counselor, and I asked Mr. Brooks, I don't know, and I asked Brooks, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, he was reprimanding him about something, and he told him, well, I'm as big a man as you are. And so Brooks said, he told him, well, let's try. And so he got smart with the teacher, and he just knocked him out. So when I went back down to the office, they said, well, what you going to do? I said, nothing. As long as you don't suspend him, keep him in the study hall, I'm going home. I said, because he's got to learn to respect authority, so he can get out there and do the same thing and somebody shoot him and kill him. I said, so he's got to learn to respect. And I went on back to my office. My son teased me about that now. He said, Ma, you just let him knock me around. I said, yes, I'd rather have him do that than have you do that to a policeman or somebody else, and then you end up in the grave. So, but I didn't have a lot of problems. One got suspended in the 11th grade. What was he doing? Doing something he shouldn't have been doing on campus. But I had always encouraged them to take more credits than they needed. If you have spare time, if you got to be at school, take an extra credits. So.
Can you think of any specific instances in terms of how race or racism impacted the city of East Cleveland, besides the white flight, but any particular?
I think that when it turned to all black council and stuff like that, the corruption had started before the blacks got in. it had started. So they left. They left office. And then it gave the appearance that we didn't know how to run a city. But the infrastructure was bad. They had a rubbish company that was ripping the city off. I can't think of the name of the company. That hauled our rubbish out, because we used this waste transfer station at that time. And they wasn't weighing properly the garbage. So the corruption was here before the city was really integrated like that, before the blacks got on the council and the commission. Because we took the rubbish company and went to court. It was a lot of mess about that. And there were a lot of little things that was done that had happened internally that maybe the masses didn't know about. So after it became all-black council or commission, well, it never was an all-black commission. Yeah, it was almost. Then they started to blame the blacks for not being able to properly run the government or run the city. Then they didn't know the inspections wasn't done, because early on the inspections was done so to the point that they knew every family and how many children was in the school system from that family early on. There were real good documentation that was kept. They knew that I had 5 children. They knew my sister, after my parents moved, had 5 children. They knew there was 10 children in this house. So the corruption was there when they went in. As a matter of fact, I often say they taught some of those people that went in how to be corrupt. And they just followed in their footsteps. I remember when I first went on the commission. Yeah, when I first went on the commission, my husband was retired, and my son wasn't working. The finance director called me and asked me, did I want my son or my husband? They knew that. Did I want them to have a position up there in the city government? And I told him no. He says, well, they're not working. I said, you only need one Walcott here. I'm going to be the only one here. None of my family can ever work for the city. I don't want any of them working for the city. The reason I know that, because when the FBI came in, they played the tape for me. Oh. They had the whole place bugged. They played the tape. And then the rubbish company, they knew I was trying to get a new drive. I guess I had got estimates or something. So my husband called me one day and told me I was at the travel agent, because I was a travel agent too. Called me and said, somebody's here going to put the drive in. Did you call them and tell them you had accepted their proposal? I said, no, I'll be right home. And when I came home, it was the company that was hauling our rubbish. They said, well, Miss Walcott, we heard you needed a drive. I said, yeah, but I didn't contact you. I said, if you don't get out of my drive, I'm going to call the police. So all kind of favors. I just say people have to know who to say no to. I didn't accept, when I was running for office, certain people, I wouldn't accept their money, their contributions. I'd send it back. I'd have my treasurer send it back. And they wonder why. I said, just send it back. I don't want it. Because, people will corrupt you if you allow them to, or if you're weak enough to be corrupted. So.
Can you repeat that?
What did I say? Can corrupt you if you will allow them to. They'll put you in the position where it tests your honesty and your integrity.
Gladys, How has inequality impacted you personally, and how has it impacted the city of East Cleveland? And again, we're talking about things like racism, sexism, motherism, anything like that. That's a new one. Probably never heard of that one. But there are some people who, are unjust or don't deal with moms the same or single women. I mean, it just depends upon the subject of the inequality.
You want to know how all that has affected me personally?
Yes, how has it impacted you personally, and then how has it impacted the city of East Cleveland?
The way it's impacted me personally is I sort of keep up a guard all the time on who I talk to and who I hang out with.
Any incidents that you can...
Well, like I know of situations where some people have accepted invitations to go to dinner with contractors. When I've been offered a lot invitations, but I would usually say, no, I usually have my meals at home, and I don't meet over lunch. I don't meet over breakfast. When I want to eat, I just go home and eat. Now, if you want to talk to me, let me know what the subject matter is, and I will either bring the law director and my husband with me. And that would usually end the conversation or the invitation, because several people got in trouble because they accepted a meal. You can't accept free meals from people that's doing business with the city. And I think sometimes they just take that too lightly, because I have been told that, well, you're too serious-minded about certain things. I say, well, and there are some people, and I'm really careful about who I even let in the house, because I get bad vibes from some people. And I'll talk to them at the door, but I don't invite them in. Go on.
Sorry. When you attended John Adams at the time, the balance was 50 whites, 50, it was right down the middle, white and black.
Yeah,
okay.
Basically.
Can you think of any instances in high school where you experienced inequality?
There were cliques, not, I can't remember anything as it relates to the teachers or the instructors, but we have a luncheon every year now since we've gotten older, and we have 300 to 400 people at our luncheons from John Adams. And it's a mixer. That's why we have so many, because we have mixed years. And so when we lived in Mount Pleasant, we lived across the street. Our neighbors were Italians, Hungarians, right in the neighborhood. And one of the guys that lived across the street from us, he came to he was at the luncheon the last time we had a luncheon, because my girlfriends come from Detroit and all over. People come from abroad sometimes for these reunions. And so one of the Italian guys came over. He said, Gladys, we acting just like we act in school. I said, how's that, Gina? He said, look at them sitting over there. He said, I'm coming over here and sit with you all, because that's where we played ball in the street and we lived across the street. I said, well, come and sit with us, and maybe some of the others will come and sit, because they had the cliques in school.
Okay.
There were cliques, in school.
So was he talking about segregation
Yeah.
of blacks and whites?
Yes,
Or just,
separation
yes,
and cliques.
yes.
I don't think they was doing anything, I don't know the word to use, but it was just they were cliques, though. The whites, the Italians, the Hungarians, the
Okay, the
blacks,
ethnic
the ethnic
cliques.
groups, the ethnic
Okay,
cliques, yeah.
okay.
Even there was some blacks because there were people, I don't know if you've heard of Miles Hikes area, in that area. They went to John Adams as well. Now they were in a separate group and they were black. You know, the Mount Pleasant group but it was just so many cliques, and even to this day I still don't understand it. But there were so many different little cliques. I guess people mingle with the people that they're familiar with.
And lived around.
And lived around. So that's all it was. But I didn't really experience anything too much in high school. All I can remember is my mother would make me wear these long stockings, and I'd pull them all the way down when I got there.
When you moved to college, even though you weren't there, you were at Case Western Reserve for a relatively short time, studying French.
Yeah, with French.
But did you experience any sexism, racism, or
No.
any inequalities there?
No.
None? Okay.
If it is, I'm accused of being naive about a lot of certain things. So maybe that's why, even earlier, because I'm a little, I don't know, I just don't look for certain things, and so.
Last pause.
Good.
Oh.
You're a wonderful subject. You're perfect. Okay. Gladys, can you recollect a memory or instance when the community fought for anything, fought for something?
In East Cleveland, it was a change of the form of government. That was one thing. Did you mean anything any different from that?
Whatever you felt.
Change of the form of government, and I guess that was one of the major things I can remember. Everything else, they should be fighting to have the primary at the same time other folks have it right now, but they, okay, for the change of form of government. Okay. There were some people that didn't like the change because they thought we would be too political, and they would bring the politics in the city. Whereas it was non-political before, because it was nonpartisan council, and it still is, in nonpartisan manager and that kind of thing. So they didn't want, they said all the negative, all the politicians would be coming into the city, and they had the wrong perception of the reason for the change. The reason for the change was to, for the city to get more of the federal dollars, because at the time we didn't qualify for, earlier years, we didn't qualify for the federal dollars for HUD and that kind of thing. And then the other thing was that we fought for was Huron Road. I still grieve over that empty space up there. And I did hear somebody say that they gave us the land. The land always belonged to East Cleveland. It was our land. It wasn't their land. It was their building. So they didn't give us the land. And with the library, the library, I guess that was another thing that I fought for. I was in the meeting with Greg Reese before he left. A couple years before they even made lot public, it was an article in the paper, because I asked him about it. about the county taking over. And I just called him and asked him. He says, well, I'm going to invite you to the meeting when this, the Baldwin-Wallace study comes in. So the things that they presented to me didn't convince me that we had to change over to the county. Because if we could do everything with, well, we had 3 libraries, number one. And if we reduced it down to 1, what is the problem? You know, you're not spending as much. You don't have as many employees. So why can't we operate 1 out of the, what do the libraries get? 17% of the real tax. I don't know, I can't remember the percentages. But the libraries get a big chunk. The schools get the biggest chunk, we know that. And the library get the other bit, and the county gets another little bit, and the city gets a little bit. So anyway, they couldn't convince me that our library would serve our community as it is now, the black community, and would provide the things there that we should have as black people. The concerts, the use of the room. I figured the county would turn those rooms into what they wanted it to be throughout the county. And it would be sort of a cookie cut kind of thing. And as far as the finance is concerned, I was in a meeting with the treasurer and Mr. Reed's school board people. And they asked about the library being open on Sunday. She says, oh, we have enough money to do that. But it's not open on Sundays. Even if it was open a half a day, maybe they have it open on a Sunday when they have the concerts and whatnot there. Maybe it's open then. But I just couldn't see it. You know, I didn't think it would service our people. I didn't think we'd have. I feel that they would take some of the things out of there that East Cleveland had inherited down through the years, like the presidential papers that are there, that was there. Well, now they're stored someplace else, they say, but I'd like to see documentation of where they're stored. The Flu Ellen artwork that's there, that was exhibit that was designated just for East Cleveland. So if the county take over, they could take anything out of there they want because it's their house. They can move anything out they choose to move out. You know, so that was my main objection for the library. And I couldn't quite understand why the school board, who's the appointing authority of the library board, how they wasn't in tune to all of that when it first started happening. You know, they were the last to come aboard to have any say-so because they had the last say-so. They had the last vote and the final vote. And that's the only way we was able to keep the library because they voted no. And I can understand how, and then I asked somebody, well, what do we not have in our library that the county provides? What do we not have? And the only thing they could tell me about was passports or something like that, you know. I said, well, got a post office. But anyway, that was a big fight. I worked with some people on that. The library and what else? Oh, Huron Road.
Did you at all get into the fight to save, I guess there was a jazz club that was in East Cleveland, the East, I can't even remember the name of it. East was part of the name, but you don't recollect that happening?
No,
Okay.
I don't recollect.
Okay.
The only thing I would fight to save, and I don't know why we do, well, I'm not doing anything about it either, so I can't say, is East Cleveland Community Theater. You know, I can't understand why we're not getting some of that, the fundings to do more with the theater. Yeah, because I remember when the church was donated to the theater back in the day for the East Cleveland Community Theaters for the plays.
Were you involved in the community theater?
Yeah,
Yeah.
early on when it first started because I knew the founder. I worked with the founder. Yeah, yeah.
Gladys, how have the surrounding institutions and cities impacted East Cleveland?
University Circle.
That's one. You have Euclid on another border.
Yeah,
Cleveland Heights.
Cleveland
So we
Heights.
share
So
the,
we're right in the middle. And I suppose the fight with the fire department and the police department is if we're not up to par, then we won't be able to, what's the term, get their they won't reciprocate when we need help. Like if the fire department do not have the manning that they're supposed to have each day, unless it's changed. I don't know. I haven't been there for a few
but it
years.
was an issue at one point in time.
Yeah, that was an issue at one time. That's why it was necessary. I guess sort of when I was serving as president, I used to tell my council, the chiefs know what they need to do what we want them to do or we require them to do to keep us safe. They know what they need. Now, if any of us want to do any research behind what they say they need, fine. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to approve everything that they say they have to keep this city safe. And I would do that in my finance committee meeting. Now, whether they go along with me, then that's another story. But usually, you know, once they come and explain what they need and why they have to have it. But the only thing now, I guess the big fight now is the cut. We have 17,000 people. We had 33,000. The strength of the police department by code is like 72, even when we had 33,000. So whatever we have now is more than the population is down. Maybe the crimes are more, I don't know, but I think most of our stuff is domestic based on the statistics.
Speaking of crime, I was talking to you earlier about the way that the city changed over time, so I'm just going back. This is the first time that you've mentioned, drugs. So what's your take on that? Have you seen changes in terms of the people, in terms of what's being done or has been done in the past about drugs? Do you feel that it's a problem at all? Has it ever been a problem for East Cleveland?
Yes, I think it was a problem for a long while. And I don't perceive every person that's walking down the street with their pants on their butt. I don't say that he's a drug person. He's just wearing his pants like that because that's the style for the young men now. You know, I don't like it, and a lot of us don't. But I don't think it's as prevalent as it was maybe 6 or 8 years ago. I think it's better now, no matter what people say. And maybe I'm being naive on that and don't know the state, just what's going on. But I don't think I don't see like people hanging out on the corners and whatever. So maybe they're doing more in their house, in their backyard. I don't know. And I know that every time, when I call the police, I know they're here in 5 minutes, 3 minutes, if I call them for anything. And usually a person, whatever street it is, where they know a person is active, the person on the street that live on the street will call you, would you call the police for me? Because they'll come, you know. But I think they'll come for anybody if you call. Some people are so afraid to call because they think somebody's listening, you know, and something's going to happen to them as a result of reporting whatever they're reporting. But I really don't think the city is that bad anymore. I don't. And maybe some other folks see things that I don't see, or like I say, maybe I'm naive about. But I think we have more good people in this city than we do the other kind. You know, because I think most of them been flushed out. I really believe that. And
you know why? What do you think?
Well, I think the police was more proactive, more active about addressing things. I think that's happened. You know.
You named earlier University Circle as being that's one of the contingent areas. Any thoughts on what they're doing, the relationship between East Cleveland? You think it's a
I think they could be a little bit more friendlier to us.
Okay.
In terms of the expansions or whatever they're doing there. Even the RTA, is it RTA? The Metro line. Years ago, when we first started having those meetings about the Metro line and all that stuff.
With Cleveland Clinic?
With RTA.
RTA.
Well, I talked about bike lanes. They was talking about bike lanes some years ago. And they were going to put them in, come up as far as University Circle. I said, people ride bikes in East Cleveland. You know, if you're going to do a bike line, why not come all the way through? One of the service directors got up in the meeting, this is a public meeting, and say, nobody rides bikes in East Cleveland. And I got up and I said, how do you know? You don't live here. You just come here and work here and then you go home. But we didn't get the bike lanes. But I still think it was something that should have been done, and it still should be done. You know, I don't know why they, just left us out of that part of it, of a bike lane, because a lot of people ride, and more people are going to start riding bikes with the gas prices the way they are. But I think, now I don't know what's going to happen with that land, with that section there that they've cleared off next to the new building on Lakeview. I'm not up on that too much. But I think they could extend themselves more into East Cleveland, because I know that Mr. Parker was saying that somebody said don't go, when they was looking for housing, don't go past the bridge. You know, so, and then I know even when I would go to National League of City early on, and I'd bring people back here for a tour or something, because I'd always promote our city. And when they come back, they say, it's nothing like what I heard. So, the wrong message is being sent about the city because it's all black. And then some people that live in the other area, like in the Forest Hills area, they divorce themselves from what's going on in the city. And I used to tell them that all the time. I said, y'all don't know what's going on in the city,
Did you know if during the time you were on with the city council, do you know if the services were different in any way for the people who lived in the Forest Hills area versus the other areas?
Well, people would say that they were different. I think the leaf pickup was different, and I would attribute that to more trees. Okay. And I know that when I was on the fiscal commission board with the fiscal commission, one of the persons on the board, he said something about the water bills being so high. That was before Cleveland took over the water. And he says, my water bill is da-da-da, and my taxes are da-da-da-da. I said, well, actually, you should be paying more for your water bill, because the water from in your area, we have to pay double. It's pumped from Cleveland Heights, so we had to buy the water from Cleveland Heights and then tack on another charge, but we didn't tack it on to the people that was just in that area. It was spread across the board. I said, so you should be paying more for your water bill. And he says, I don't know how you could say that. I said, well, you check and you'll see why you should be paying more. And he says, and my taxes. I say, you choose to live in a $200,000 home, so your tax is supposed to be more. I live in a $60,000 maybe, so mine are less. So don't tell me you should get more services because of that. You should get the same thing that I get. So, we go, anyway.
So we talked about East Cleveland, University
Circle,
area.
yeah.
Now, Cleveland Heights, we share the park. What are your feelings about that, since we're talking about
I think Cleveland,
how surrounding institutions and cities impact East Cleveland?
Cleveland Heights have wanted to take over part of our parks for years. And I think they do have a little portion. Somebody got in there and let them have one portion of it. But I don't like their parks. They said we need to develop we like the park to be a park where people can go and bring their families. We don't want, I wouldn't want soccer fields all over an area and baseball diamonds all over. So if a family wants to go for a picnic, they can't sit under a shade tree and have a picnic. That's just my perception. But Cleveland Heights want the better part of our park, and their garbage was running down into our park, into the lower part off of Forest Hills for years.
Has that been arrested?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's been addressed. But for years it wasn't. It was coming off of Forest Hills and down into Terrace in that area. That's why all that odor would be down there a lot of time. And all that was coming from Cleveland Heights. They was dumping up there. I always used to get the feeling they looked down on us, but they would like to have everything from Terrace up.
In terms of Euclid, do you have anything to say about that part of East Cleveland?
The only thing is what I said about the, about the bikes, and I think the county could do more. They could do more as helping us to keep Euclid as attractive as University Circle. They could extend it all the way down. I don't know if you've read the article, but I read an article, this book this man wrote about East Cleveland in the 1920s. And he talked about Euclid Avenue and how busy and how nice it was, and everybody wanted to come to East Cleveland. Well, that was during Rockefeller days and Cartwright, Austin, and all those days. And he talked about the Windermere Methodist Church, which is still there, and how nice Euclid was,
Any idea of the name of that book, or do you have it somewhere?
Yeah, I have it. Yeah, I have it. It's just one section of it is just devoted to East Cleveland, in the 20s, and leading on up to, late 30s and whatnot, and how it was, how it used to be, and how everybody wanted to come to East Cleveland, And it, as a matter of fact, Windermere Church is still the same as it was, but it got burned on one side. It was it's a tavern or something, a bar, not a tavern they called it then, adjacent to the church. So they say the fire started and they saved one part of the church and built the church where the steeple and everything is.
So now what about the city of Euclid, that part of East Cleveland? Do you Is there anything that you can say as it relates to any institutions or the city itself? Has that impacted East Cleveland, and if so, how?
I don't know. I haven't thought too much about Euclid, what they, Cleveland Heights, you know, they want to be separate. They don't want. But in my opinion, that's just my opinion. So with Euclid, no, I haven't, haven't thought too much about Euclid, Ohio.
So what's your vision for a future East Cleveland?
Oh, wow. I think, and I might not live long enough, I think that I feel that people are buying up property in East Cleveland, and not people of color. I think there's some other folks that's buying up a lot of land here because I think they feel that it's going to come back and be what it was. And personally, I don't want it to come back what it was. I want it to be better than what it was. I think it can be better. I think where they're demolished, where they're tearing down houses, then not necessarily build another house there, but use that for green space until something comes along to develop it. Use gardens. Gardens, well, somebody said you don't want gardens all over the city, but gardens can be beautiful, you know. And I think it will come back to be a thriving community once we get the right elected officials in there to go after the grants. There's all kind of money out there for cities like East Cleveland. We need a grant writer, you know. I know earlier years, I keep going back too far, earlier years I tried to negotiate with a grant writer that just do grants for small cities. Not necessarily just East Cleveland, but other cities that's the same size as East Cleveland that can't afford to pay them, you know, as much as they're required. But when they write the grant, they get their money out of the grants anyway, you know, once it's awarded. So I think it could be an ideal community once we get the personality fights out of the way and start thinking about the city as a whole.
And you think that's happening? Or you're just saying that wistfully, you know, that's you just want it to be over and done with. I mean, not that you don't, but
I don't think that's happening right now. Like I used to say, I know somebody asked me, well, what we accomplished when I was in office. I said, the most thing I remember is I was putting out fires. You can't focus on something if everywhere there's a fire. You got to put the fire out. You know, there's some corruption here. Somebody's doing here. And you got to be the person to help to put that fire out. So you get off focus. So once they get all the fires out wherever they are, whether it's in the administration, police department, finance department, we've had far too many finance directors for my part lately. I don't understand that at all. What's going on in there with the money? You know, people say the mayor can't take no money. The finance director have to write the checks. He's the one that should be accounted for. He's bonded, you know. So if I come along and say, I need a check from this fund for this and for that, and if I write that check out of that fund and know that's designated money for something else, then it's on the person that writes the check to me, you know, the finance director. And then part of it is on the person that instructs him to do it. But nobody's saying anything about the finance directors. They're just changing finance directors. So I think they need to, whoever goes on in these 3 slots that's going to be open, they need to go down to Cleveland State and do some workshops. Right they can meet out of the city like that. They can go down there and do whatever they need to do, you know, in order to get focused again and come together. That's for all three administrations, you know, because unless they start working together, then we're going to remain where we are. But, you know, seem like we're pulling against each other. For what reason? We should all have the same goal.
Certainly, we have discussed some major issues, but can you tell me about any of the other major issues that need addressing in order to better this community, this neighborhood, this city?
Well, I guess the service department can do more, but they say they don't have the personnel. Equipment broke and all kind of excuses like that. So, not excuses, reasons, you know. Years ago, we had rubbish pickup twice a week. They came to my backyard to pick the trash up. Yeah, but I would make my sons take it out front. So, at least we would. My husband would too. Tell them they could take the trash out to the curb, you know. But we had a bike patrol. I know maybe it's dangerous for bike patrols, but the city is small. They ride in them cars, so they can go two on bikes or have a car. Maybe they don't have enough officers. But the community policing, I think the chief would probably say, Gladys, you do not know what you're talking about. But but we bought bikes, really expensive bikes when I was in office. For them, even if they just would ride their bikes up at Superior Shopping Center, you know, across the street from City Hall, you know, and the community policing, you know. I think that would be more visibility. I used to fight for, and I still believe it, the police bring their cars home, live in the city. Those that live in the city, drive your car home. The visibility will keep down crime. Because a lot of small cities, that's what they do, you know. But, you know, I don't know how many officers we have that even live in the city. But even if they don't, just drive a car and park it in a drive. You know, the visibility will deter any crime that might happen. And then, one of the small cities said they piped music in, like classical music, and played it throughout the city at different places. And that deters people. It worked for them. It was one of the cities in California that I learned. And then the other thing that will help more, the administration didn't, and I'm not bashing the administration. I don't want you to think that. It's just they didn't sign off on the National League of Cities. Where's the council going to learn? Where are they going to learn if they don't communicate with other cities and see what other cities are doing, what works for other cities? You don't go to, there's no school that you can go to learn to be a legislator. Because I didn't go to school, but I would go to every conference that I could go to, that I could attend. The National League of Cities is a learning process for the council, administration, for everybody, even if they just send 2 people. You know, they could bring the information back. I think I brought back the DARE program years ago. And a lot of stuff, you know, you learn that other cities are doing, small cities, things that work. And just about anything should work in a 2.5-mile residential and business section. Anything, any grant, any award, just have to have a grant writer. So we have to look for a grant writer. And I think the city will, I still have a lot of faith in this city. I still love the city.
Gladys, in closing,
Yes, ma'am.
What would you be prepared to do or continue to do to participate in helping to make East Cleveland better?
Well, I'll continue to, of course, I know I'll continue to promote the gardening, even for people in their backyards. Backyard gardening, I'll promote that. I'll continue to share some of my experiences with the council people if they wanted on a one-on-one basis. I'll continue the ward club meetings. You know, I'll continue that. I think people getting together, because I think people they don't recognize precinct people as elected people, but they are elected. I used to recognize them every time I'd see them in a meeting. Precinct committeemen are elected. They're elected officials. All 18 that we have in the city. I would try to get them more actively involved in the community. And if they can't pull their community, I better not talk too much about that because I'm not doing as much as I should be doing. But they can get captains on each street, you know, because I have some captains that I have volunteered to help me out. On each street, you can have a captain on 3rd, a person that will make sure literature is passed out, make sure they can make the calls on that street. And it wouldn't be on one person. I think those are the kind of things they can do that they don't have to have the dollars to do it with. It just engage people, engage more people in the process. I'll continue to serve on whatever committees I serve on. And continue to monitor what's going on. And like I say, share some of my bad experiences, because if you don't hear about where you come from, you know, you had to get to where you are somehow, you know. Something had to happen here in order for you to get here. So, I don't know.
Gladys,
I'll just be here.
Thank you so very much. And now I want to ask Brandon, do you have any questions?
Uh-oh.
I don't really have any questions. We had a really great meeting with you, but if you could just touch on it, and you touched on it a little bit, but in regards to inequality in other institutions or government, I know you said earlier you changed forms of government because we weren't getting our fair share. Is there any inequality in that? And is there any inequality in what happened with the post office, the RTA, and then the county throughout the years supplying East Cleveland with the resources that they would supply other cities with?
There was, let's see, I remember as far as not getting our share, I know there was something that was introduced on the federal level, I believe. It was Healthy Start, Healthy Something, Healthy Start.
Healthy Families?
Healthy Start, Healthy Families, thank you. And I looked at some of the documentation that they had as a result of that program, and at the time, it wasn't in our community at all. We didn't get any part of that. And then later on, well, I think it was like through Huff Norwood, but later on we did get the clinic across the street from the school, but that was much later. And the inequality for as far as the that was on the federal level. As far as the county, I'm trying to think of some specific incidents, but I can't right now. But I know somewhere down the road I learned that we wasn't getting, the thing I lobbied against that was held against me was the school across the street from Cummings next door to Cummins and Davis,
Superior?
on Euclid, right on Euclid. You
At
know,
St. Phil's, at St. Philomena Church?
no, it's right next to Cummings and Davis. It's a developmental school.
Yes, I know you're talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, right.
The adult developmental school. When I found out about that, I went down to the county and talked against it. Not that I'm not compassionate for people that have special needs, but I felt that a person that had a special need, they're going to go wherever that need is provided. And I thought it was awful for the county to put that building on Euclid Avenue, because that should have been left for other kind of development, because whoever needs that service, they could have put it on Hayden Avenue. They're going to come to Hayden. They're going to come to wherever it is, because they have buses that transport people, and people that need it, they're going to come. Now they had put one building, one school for the infants to adult, I guess, up right across from McGregor there, up in back of off Forest Hills there. There's one up there.
Was
So-
they closed?
Did they?
Years. A friend of mine, who's also one of my chum sisters, was the director, and they've been gone now for about 6 years.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, because it seemed like I went up there for something when I was campaigning for something. But anyway, and I didn't feel like that was 6 years ago. Well, are they? I don't know if they're using the building for something else.
They could be, but I just
Yeah,
know that
okay. But anyway, that was one pet peeve of mine with the county, you know. And then, you know, it appeared that,
Okay, so we're back on recording.
Okay. So is there any piece that we need to go back to?
No, we got all that.
Okay.
And we're talking about inequality, federal government, post office.
the post office, you know, when they first built it, we kind of felt it was in the wrong spot, because where it's right there by the tracks and that stoplight there, and then you can't see the traffic coming out of there. But then on the other hand, I said, well, at that time I figured, well, we're lucky to have a post office as small as we are. As far as the post office closing, I don't know if we get the city income tax from the people that deliver mail in our city, because we still have postal workers that's receiving a paycheck as a result of delivering mail in East Cleveland. So I don't know that. But if we're not, that's something that needs to be investigated. I was real proud of the mayor when he talked about the, you know, the post people running lights and going too fast and some of that kind of stuff anyway. But, and as far as its closing, I can understand why they closed that part of the branch, you know, the service that they provide, because of what's happening all over, because they're talking about cutting out postal delivery on Saturday as of August 1. So I can understand that. I think that since we have the cable TV, that it should be publicized on there, the hours that the post office is open and when it's closed, so people won't be going there trying to drop mail or buy stamps and that kind of thing when it's closed, because it's closed during lunch hours. During a lunch hour. So, yeah, I stood outside lobbying for it not to close, but then, on the other hand, I can understand why. Because there's not enough revenue coming in as a result of the things that people are doing now online. And as far as what, did you ask about Huron Road?
Huron Road, but with the post office, why not Cleveland Heights? Why not the post office?
In East Cleveland?
Yeah, why East Cleveland? Why that one? Why not Cleveland Heights, or why not the one over here in University Circle? Why not shut those down?
Well, Cleveland Heights is a much bigger branch, you know, and I'm just looking at it, you know, openly. And it's more traffic because of its location. I think as long as we have this, I don't know if there was any politics behind that at all, but I think that's federal, right? So it couldn't have been local politics.
It used to be part of the federal government.
Oh, that's
Now,
right. They changed over. Yeah, that's right. So
Do you think inequality, so far as the city, played any type of decision making in that?
I don't in the quality city playing any part in them closing.
Inequality, so far as closing the East Cleveland, as opposed to closing Cleveland Heights or somewhere else in Cleveland.
I really don't. I really don't feel that it did. I just figured they wasn't having the traffic there. And as far as, I felt bad as far as it taking the revenue out of East Cleveland. That's why I was wondering, do we get anything as a result of the delivery, people working in East Cleveland, the postman delivering the service. And maybe I should, but I don't have a big problem with it as long as it don't close completely. Now, if it closed completely, then I would have a big problem. I would have something really, say about that. What else? Huron, what did you ask me? I need to be writing it down. I'm getting short-sighted.
That was pretty much it. I just wanted to know about your feelings, because I know you were involved in government for so long.
Mm-hmm.
If you felt that inequality played a significant role so far as our city receiving county or federal funds, and then the closing of the post office or the closing of Huron Road. So.
Yeah. As far as the city receiving federal funds and state funds and county funds, yes, I feel like there is, and there might still be. So, but I would like to see, I know people talked about the estimated revenue that the county, that we anticipate receiving. I don't know what that is. I don't know whether it's 13 million or 16 million. So I heard 2 or 3 things go across the pipe that they talked about. So even if it's if the bottom line is 16 million, then the county says 13, the other 3 million is designated funds. So we can't use it anyway for anything for hiring police or for the general fund. It's designated. So we get it. I know we've always gotten some money extra other than what's in the general fund. But the extra money, if you touch that, that's money that you have to, you'll be penalized for. So if that's happened, I hope that have not happened. And it will not happen. But changing the finance directors, that's why I feel a little bit uncomfortable with what's going on in that department. And I love our mayor, I love Gary, and I think he's trying to do the right thing. I really do, but I'm playing too much, getting too political. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it for me. I'll turn it back over to Michele.
Okay.
I have another question. When earlier you mentioned Hellis S. Brown, and you knew her because her name is on a building that is constantly coming up in East Cleveland. I would like to know a little bit about Helen Brown, the times that you knew her. So could you tell us?
Yeah, she was the coordinator, I believe.
Let's start by saying her name, like
Okay, Helen S. Brown. She was the.
Because when we edit,
Yeah.
then that would be one nice piece.
Mm-hmm.
They can cut out, all
yes,
this piece.
yeah.
And then they can start with.
Okay. I met her when A.D. Little came. I met Helen S. Brown when A.D. Little came into the city to provide those of us that was there at the meeting with the plan that they had for the city of East Cleveland, based on the dollars that we had been granted. And so her dream was the Helen S. Brown Senior Citizen Center. And I'm so glad that that happened as a result of that.
What was the name of the funding?
I can't remember. It was federal money. A.D. Little was just the company that came in to help draw the plans up for the city, for Hayden Avenue, for whatever was going to go on Euclid, for the Martin Luther King Civic Center. So it was a lot of money for that time. And Miss Brown's passion was the seniors. And that's how we come about building that building. I think it was based on most of the funds that came out of that study. And she was there for a long time at Helen until she passed away. She was a very, very nice. I know her son is around the city. I don't know if he ran for office at one time. Gregory Brown. I think that's his name. But she was just instrumental in that. And the thing I don't understand is we get, based on the activities at Helen S. Brown at the senior building, what is it, Western Reserve on Aging, I think that's the name of the funding, that we get dollars allocated for Helen S. Brown based on the activities that's created there and the people that we serve. So I don't know how the city is funding that out of general fund, because we used to only give them, traditionally we've given them part of the money that we would get federally, because it would be the way it would be set up. It was like about $60,000 out of whatever we received. So that's another part I don't quite understand, but maybe things have changed. But I don't think so. I think that those fundings are still available, based on the people you deliver meals to, based on the activities that you have at the center, and the records that you keep in order to say we deliver meals to 300 people. And they could be in East Cleveland or Cleveland Heights, wherever they are, That's how it was in the past.
Gladys, you have just really opened my eyes up to a lot of things. That's the reason why I was not going to give up. You have that feeling that there's a lot there, and just from, because we'd always come in contact with each other. Back when Stokes, when I was working on Angela Stokes' campaign.
Oh,
that's
okay.
when I first met you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
Just came in from Chicago around that time.
Okay.
And so I'm very grateful that you finally said yes. Not because you didn't want to, but you had a lot going on. So
yes.
Thank you so very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope I've been helpful to the project and didn't talk too much about nothing.
Wonderful. So thank you.
But it refreshed my memory about a lot of things. Yeah. Okay.